Question 1. The review process indicates that a minor, non-critical component in the cabin of a Japan Airlines aircraft has been identified as potentially malfunctioning during pre-flight checks. While the issue is not immediately impacting flight operations, it falls within the scope of components that require regular inspection and maintenance, as per the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and Japan Airlines' internal maintenance schedule. The flight is scheduled to depart shortly, and delaying the flight for a thorough inspection and potential replacement would cause significant passenger inconvenience and incur operational costs. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Japan Airlines ground crew supervisor? Option A. Immediately halt the departure of the flight and initiate a full inspection and necessary maintenance for the identified component, reporting the situation according to established safety protocols. Option B. Consult with the flight crew to gauge their comfort level with the potential issue, allowing them to make the final decision on whether to proceed with the flight. Option C. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, documenting the potential issue for future maintenance during the next scheduled check, as it is not a critical safety component. Option D. Attempt a quick, superficial fix to ensure the component appears functional for the immediate flight, deferring a proper inspection to a later date to avoid delays. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, documenting the potential issue for future maintenance during the next scheduled check, as it is not a critical safety component. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines personnel regarding the adherence to the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and relevant safety regulations. The core issue is ensuring that all operational decisions, particularly those impacting flight safety, are made in strict accordance with established legal frameworks and internal company policies designed to uphold these laws. The need for absolute priority of regulatory compliance over other considerations, such as immediate operational efficiency or cost-saving measures, is paramount. The correct approach involves prioritizing the immediate reporting and rectification of any identified safety deficiency, regardless of its perceived severity or potential impact on flight schedules. This aligns directly with the fundamental principles enshrined in the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan, which mandates that all aviation operations must be conducted with the utmost regard for safety. Specifically, Article 10 of the Act requires operators to take necessary measures to ensure safety in flight operations. Furthermore, internal company safety management systems, which are themselves regulated under the Act, dictate a clear protocol for reporting and addressing such issues. This approach demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility, safeguarding passengers, crew, and the public. An incorrect approach would be to downplay or delay reporting a potential safety issue to avoid operational disruption. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of the Civil Aeronautics Act, which places safety above all other operational concerns. Such an action could lead to severe consequences, including accidents, regulatory penalties, and significant damage to Japan Airlines' reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to resolve the issue internally without following established reporting procedures, especially if the resolution itself might compromise safety standards or bypass necessary inspections. This undermines the integrity of the safety management system and the regulatory oversight framework. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize passenger convenience or schedule adherence over a potential safety concern. While passenger satisfaction is important, it can never supersede the legal and ethical obligation to ensure flight safety, as mandated by Japanese aviation law. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the potential safety risk. They must then consult the relevant sections of the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and Japan Airlines' own Safety Management System, SMS manual. The framework should prioritize immediate reporting of any identified safety concern to the appropriate authorities within the company, and if necessary, to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLET. The decision-making process must be guided by the principle that safety is non-negotiable, and that all actions must be in full compliance with legal requirements and internal safety protocols. Question 2. What factors determine Japan Airlines' adherence to operational safety protocols when faced with potential flight delays, according to Japanese aviation regulatory frameworks? Option A. Strict adherence to the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLET, safety directives, prioritizing passenger and crew safety above all else, even at the cost of minor delays. Option B. Perceived urgency to minimize flight delays to meet passenger expectations and airline punctuality targets, potentially allowing for slight deviations from standard safety margins. Option C. The economic impact of delays versus the cost of immediate, potentially unnecessary safety checks, with a focus on cost-saving measures when possible. Option D. The subjective assessment of operational conditions by individual flight crew members, without strict reliance on predefined regulatory safety parameters. The correct answer is A. Strict adherence to the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLIT safety directives, prioritizing passenger and crew safety above all else, even at the cost of minor delays. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an understanding of the specific regulatory framework governing aviation operations in Japan, particularly concerning the operational integrity and safety standards that Japan Airlines must adhere to. The pressure to meet operational targets can sometimes conflict with the strict adherence to safety protocols, demanding careful judgment to prioritize safety above all else. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan and relevant Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLIT regulations. This approach prioritizes safety by ensuring that all operational decisions are made in strict accordance with established safety margins and procedures, even if it leads to minor delays. The regulatory justification lies in the fundamental principle of aviation safety enshrined in Japanese law, which mandates that the safety of passengers and crew is paramount. Adhering to these regulations prevents potential accidents, ensures compliance, and maintains the public trust in Japan Airlines' commitment to safety. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on minimizing flight delays without considering the underlying safety implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the Civil Aeronautics Act's emphasis on operational safety and MLIT directives that outline specific safety margins for factors like weather and aircraft performance. Such an approach risks compromising safety by potentially operating in conditions that, while not immediately catastrophic, fall outside established safe operating parameters, leading to potential incidents and regulatory penalties. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost-saving measures over strict adherence to maintenance schedules, even if the aircraft appears outwardly sound, is also professionally unacceptable. This violates the stringent maintenance regulations stipulated by the Civil Aeronautics Act and MLIT, which require proactive and scheduled maintenance to prevent mechanical failures. Ignoring these regulations, even for perceived short-term economic benefits, creates a significant risk of in-flight malfunctions, endangering lives and leading to severe legal and reputational consequences for Japan Airlines. A further incorrect approach that involves circumventing established reporting procedures for minor operational anomalies to avoid bureaucratic scrutiny is professionally unsound. The Civil Aeronautics Act and associated MLIT guidelines mandate transparent and comprehensive reporting of all operational events, regardless of perceived severity. Failing to report anomalies, even minor ones, prevents the identification of systemic issues, hinders continuous improvement in safety protocols, and can lead to more serious problems escalating unnoticed. This directly contravenes the spirit and letter of Japanese aviation law, which relies on accurate data for safety oversight. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear hierarchy of priorities, with safety unequivocally at the top. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as operational efficiency versus safety protocols, professional must consult the relevant Japanese aviation regulations and internal Japan Airlines safety policies. If there is any ambiguity or potential risk, the decision should always err on the side of caution, even if it results in inconvenience or additional cost. Escalation to supervisors or safety officers should be the standard procedure when significant safety concerns arise. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates a potential, though unconfirmed, vulnerability in Japan Airlines' passenger data handling system that could expose personal information. Which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical data protection standards for Japan Airlines? Option A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive, documented internal investigation to assess the vulnerability, implement necessary security enhancements, and consult with legal counsel regarding any reporting obligations under Japanese law. Option B. Instruct the IT department to make minor, undocumented adjustments to the system and monitor for any immediate complaints from passengers. Option C. Inform relevant regulatory bodies of the potential vulnerability without conducting an initial internal assessment to ensure full transparency. Option D. Acknowledge the potential vulnerability internally, but defer a full investigation until a more significant issue arises to conserve resources. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a comprehensive, documented internal investigation to assess the vulnerability, implement necessary security enhancements, and consult with legal counsel regarding any reporting obligations under Japanese law. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the complex interplay between internal company policies, the specific regulatory framework governing aviation in Japan, and ethical considerations regarding data privacy and security. Japan Airlines, as a publicly traded entity and a major international carrier, is subject to stringent regulations designed to protect passenger data and ensure operational integrity. A governance review highlighting potential vulnerabilities necessitates immediate and decisive action that aligns with these legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation that prioritizes data security and compliance with Japanese data protection laws, such as the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, (AP). This approach ensures that any identified risks are addressed systematically, with appropriate mitigation strategies implemented and regulatory bodies informed if necessary. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling and upholds the trust placed in Japan Airlines by its passengers and stakeholders. An incorrect approach that involves downplaying the findings or delaying a comprehensive investigation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such actions could lead to breaches of the EPI, resulting in substantial fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Ignoring potential security vulnerabilities also exposes the company to operational disruptions and security threats, which are critical concerns in the aviation industry. Furthermore, failing to document the investigation and remediation steps would hinder future audits and demonstrate a lack of accountability, contravening good corporate governance principles. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the scope and severity of the findings from the governance review. They must then consult the relevant Japanese aviation and data protection regulations to determine the specific legal obligations. A systematic investigation involving relevant internal departments, e.g., IT security, legal, compliance, and potentially external experts, should be initiated. All actions and findings must be meticulously documented. Communication with regulatory authorities should be considered based on the nature and impact of the identified issues, adhering to reporting timelines and requirements. This structured, compliant, and transparent process ensures that risks are managed effectively and that Japan Airlines upholds its legal and ethical responsibilities. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a potential new supplier for Japan Airlines in-flight catering services has been operating in a region with a known history of corruption. While the supplier claims to adhere to all ethical standards, concerns have been raised internally about their past business practices. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for Japan Airlines' procurement team? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence investigation into the supplier's background, financial records, and compliance policies, seeking independent verification of their ethical practices before making a decision. Option B. Immediately proceed with contracting the supplier, trusting their assurances of ethical conduct and focusing on the competitive pricing they offer. Option C. Accept the supplier's assurances at face value and delegate the responsibility of monitoring their ethical compliance to the supplier themselves. Option D. Reject the supplier outright based on the general reputation of the region, without further investigation, to avoid any potential association with unethical practices. The correct answer is B. Immediately proceed with contracting the supplier, trusting their assurances of ethical conduct and focusing on the competitive pricing they offer. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an employee of Japan Airlines to navigate a situation where a potential business partner's practices might conflict with the company's ethical standards and potentially applicable Japanese regulations, concerning business conduct and anti-corruption. The core difficulty lies in balancing the pursuit of business opportunities with the imperative to uphold integrity and comply with legal and ethical obligations. A hasty decision could expose Japan Airlines to significant reputational damage, legal penalties, and loss of public trust. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough due diligence investigation into the potential partner's operations and compliance history. This aligns with the principles of responsible business conduct expected of major corporations like Japan Airlines, and implicitly with Japanese legal frameworks that emphasize good faith and ethical dealings in business. Such an investigation would seek to verify the partner's claims, assess any red flags related to bribery, corruption, or other unethical practices, and ensure alignment with Japan Airlines' internal code of conduct and any relevant Japanese laws or guidelines governing corporate social responsibility and international business. This proactive and investigative stance is crucial for informed decision-making and risk mitigation. An incorrect approach of immediately proceeding with the partnership without further inquiry would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a potential willingness to overlook or ignore questionable practices, which could lead to complicity in unethical or illegal activities. This directly contravenes the principles of corporate governance and the expectation that companies operate with integrity. Another incorrect approach of rejecting the partnership solely based on unsubstantiated rumors, without any attempt to verify the information, is also professionally unsound. While caution is necessary, an outright rejection without investigation can lead to missed legitimate business opportunities and could be perceived as unfair or discriminatory if the rumors are unfounded. It lacks the balanced and evidence-based decision-making required in professional settings. A third incorrect approach of delegating the entire decision-making process to the potential partner's assurances without independent verification is equally flawed. This approach abdicates responsibility and relies on potentially biased information, failing to exercise the necessary professional skepticism and due diligence expected of Japan Airlines employees. It bypasses the critical internal oversight and risk assessment mechanisms that are in place to protect the company. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify the potential risks and ethical considerations. Second, gather relevant information through independent investigation and due diligence. Third, assess the findings against Japan Airlines' internal policies, ethical guidelines, and applicable Japanese laws. Fourth, consult with relevant internal departments, e.g., legal compliance if necessary. Finally, make a well-informed decision based on the evidence, prioritizing integrity and long-term sustainability over short-term gains. Question 5. The audit findings indicate that a Japan Airlines aircraft was scheduled for an urgent international flight, but the maintenance team reported that a critical component inspection was running behind schedule due to unforeseen technical issues. The lead engineer, under pressure to meet the flight departure time, considered authorizing the aircraft's release based on a verbal confirmation that the inspection would be completed immediately after departure. With the documentation to follow, what is the most appropriate course of action for the lead engineer to ensure compliance with Japan Civil Aviation Bureau (JCAB) regulations and uphold aviation safety standards? Option A. Authorize the aircraft's release for the flight based on the verbal assurance of the maintenance team, with a commitment to complete the inspection and documentation post-flight. Option B. Delay the flight until all mandated maintenance checks, including the critical component inspection and its full documentation, are completed and verified as per JCAB requirements. Option C. Delegate the final sign-off to a junior technician who is familiar with the aircraft, trusting their judgment to complete the remaining checks quickly. Option D. Proceed with the flight, but instruct the cabin crew to inform passengers that a minor maintenance check is still pending. The correct answer is B. Delay the flight until all mandated maintenance checks, including the critical component inspection and its full documentation, are completed and verified as per JCAB requirements. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines' compliance team due to the potential conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The need to balance timely aircraft maintenance with the thoroughness required by regulatory bodies, such as the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau (JCAB), demands careful judgment. Misinterpreting or circumventing these regulations can lead to severe safety risks, operational disruptions, and significant legal and reputational damage for Japan Airlines. The correct approach involves prioritizing the completion of all mandated maintenance checks and documentation, as per JCAB guidelines before the aircraft is cleared for flight. This upholds the principle of safety first, which is paramount in aviation. Specifically, JCAB regulations mandate meticulous record-keeping and adherence to approved maintenance procedures to ensure airworthiness. By ensuring all checks are completed and properly documented, Japan Airlines demonstrates its commitment to regulatory compliance and passenger safety, thereby mitigating risks of accidents, grounding orders, and penalties. An incorrect approach would be to clear the aircraft for flight based on an incomplete set of checks, relying on a verbal assurance from the maintenance team that the remaining tasks will be completed shortly. This bypasses the established safety protocols and regulatory requirements for aircraft maintenance sign-off. The regulatory failure lies in not adhering to the JCAB explicit requirements for documented completion of all pre-flight checks, potentially leading to an unairworthy aircraft being operated. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize the flight schedule over the integrity of the maintenance process. By signing off on the aircraft's airworthiness, despite knowing that critical checks are outstanding, this constitutes a serious breach of professional ethics and regulatory compliance. The ethical failure is the deliberate disregard for safety in favor of commercial interests, which can have catastrophic consequences. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the final sign-off to a junior technician without adequate oversight or verification of the completed tasks. While delegation can be a tool for efficiency, it must not compromise the rigor of safety-critical processes. The regulatory and ethical failure here is the abdication of responsibility for ensuring compliance and safety, which ultimately rests with senior personnel. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a clear understanding of the regulatory framework, JCAB guidelines, a commitment to the ethical imperative of passenger safety, and a robust internal control system. When faced with a conflict between operational demands and safety regulations, the decision-maker must always err on the side of caution, ensuring full compliance with all mandated procedures and documentation before any flight operations commence. Escalation to higher management or the compliance department should be considered if there is any doubt or pressure to compromise safety standards. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for a position at Japan Airlines, while working on a situational judgment exercise, encounters a scenario that closely mirrors a publicly available case study they have previously encountered. The candidate recognizes the core elements of the case study and feels they know the best answer based on their prior research. What is the most professionally appropriate course of action for the candidate? Option A. Discreetly search online for the original case study to confirm their understanding and ensure their answer aligns with established best practices. Option B. Attempt to answer the question without referencing their prior knowledge, focusing solely on the information provided within the assessment itself. Option C. Proceed with answering the question using their prior knowledge of the case study, believing it demonstrates preparedness and analytical skill. Option D. Immediately cease working on that specific question and inform the assessment administrator of the perceived overlap, requesting guidance. The correct answer is C. Proceed with answering the question using their prior knowledge of the case study, believing it demonstrates preparedness and analytical skill. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the ethical conduct and regulatory compliance expected of employees at Japan Airlines, specifically concerning the handling of sensitive information during a hiring assessment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to demonstrate initiative and problem-solving skills with the absolute requirement to adhere to the integrity and confidentiality of the assessment process. Misjudging this balance can lead to serious ethical breaches and potential violations of internal company policies and aviation industry regulations regarding data security and fair assessment practices. The correct approach involves recognizing the boundaries of acceptable behavior during an assessment and prioritizing the integrity of the evaluation process. This means refraining from any actions that could be construed as seeking an unfair advantage or compromising the confidentiality of the assessment materials. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of honesty, integrity, and respect for proprietary information, which are fundamental to employment at any reputable organization, including Japan Airlines, and are implicitly or explicitly covered by their internal code of conduct and employment agreements. These principles are paramount in maintaining trust and ensuring a fair playing field for all candidates. An incorrect approach that involves attempting to access or utilize information beyond what is provided during the assessment, such as researching specific case study answers online, represents a significant ethical failure. This action undermines the purpose of the assessment, which is to evaluate a candidate's inherent skills and judgment, not their ability to find pre-existing solutions. It also violates the implicit trust placed in candidates to engage with the assessment in good faith. Furthermore, such behavior could be seen as a breach of confidentiality and a disregard for the intellectual property of Japan Airlines, potentially leading to disqualification and damage to the candidate's professional reputation. Another incorrect approach, such as discussing specific assessment questions or content with other candidates before the assessment is fully concluded, also constitutes an ethical lapse. This action compromises the fairness of the assessment for all participants and violates the principle of equal opportunity. It can be seen as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage through collusion, which is antithetical to the values of meritocracy and fair competition. This behavior directly contravenes the expectations of professional conduct and could lead to disciplinary action. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the assessment's purpose and the ethical guidelines governing it. Candidates should always operate with a presumption of integrity and confidentiality. If there is any ambiguity regarding acceptable behavior, the most prudent course of action is to err on the side of caution and refrain from any action that could be perceived as compromising the assessment's integrity. Seeking clarification from the assessment administrators, if appropriate and permitted, is a more professional route than taking unauthorized actions. The ultimate goal is to demonstrate competence and ethical character through genuine effort and adherence to established protocols. Question 7. The audit findings indicate that a critical maintenance log for a Japan Airlines aircraft scheduled for an international flight has a missing entry for a recent engine inspection, with the certifying engineer's signature absent. The ground crew is under pressure to depart on time to avoid significant passenger inconvenience and potential financial penalties for delay. Option A. Delegate the responsibility of verifying the missing log entry to the flight crew, allowing them to make a judgment call on the aircraft's airworthiness before departure. Option B. Instruct the certifying engineer to complete the log entry retrospectively after the flight has departed, assuming the inspection was indeed performed correctly. Option C. Immediately halt the flight preparation and escalate the missing log entry to the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, designated safety officer for Japan Airlines, pending a full verification of the engine inspection and proper documentation before any further action is taken. Option D. Proceed with the flight, relying on the verbal confirmation from the ground crew that the inspection was completed, and address the documentation issue upon the aircraft's return. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt the flight preparation and escalate the missing log entry to the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, designated safety officer for Japan Airlines, pending a full verification of the engine inspection and proper documentation before any further action is taken. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines personnel due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The need to maintain flight schedules while ensuring all safety checks are completed thoroughly requires careful judgment and a commitment to prioritizing safety above all else. The audit findings highlight a potential lapse in this critical balance. The correct approach involves immediately escalating the identified discrepancy to the appropriate safety oversight department within Japan Airlines and halting any operations that could be compromised by the unverified maintenance. This is justified by the paramount importance of aviation safety, as mandated by the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, regulations. JCAB framework emphasizes a proactive safety culture where any doubt regarding airworthiness must lead to a cessation of operations until full compliance is confirmed. This approach upholds the principle of safety first and ensures that all aircraft meet the stringent standards required for public transport, thereby preventing potential accidents and protecting passenger lives. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the flight, assuming the maintenance was completed correctly or that the discrepancy is minor. This fails to acknowledge the JCAB's stringent requirements for documented proof of maintenance and airworthiness. It introduces an unacceptable level of risk, potentially violating Article 10 of the Civil Aeronautics Act of Japan, which mandates that aircraft must be maintained in an airworthy condition. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to rectify the documentation after the flight has departed. This is ethically unsound and legally problematic, as it suggests a deliberate attempt to circumvent safety protocols and falsify records. Such an action undermines the integrity of Japan Airlines' safety management system and could lead to severe penalties from the JCAB, including suspension of operations or revocation of licenses. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing and understanding the potential safety implications of any discrepancy. 2. Consulting relevant regulations and internal procedures to determine the correct course of action. 3. Escalating concerns through the established reporting channels without delay. 4. Documenting all actions taken and communications. 5. Never compromising on safety for the sake of expediency or operational targets. Question 8. The audit findings indicate a potential discrepancy in how Japan Airlines' customer service department has been logging and storing passenger feedback, raising concerns about the adherence to data privacy protocols. Which of the following actions best represents the most appropriate initial response for Japan Airlines management? Option A. Instruct the customer service department to delete all potentially problematic passenger feedback logs to prevent further scrutiny. Option B. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the potential data handling issue and outlining steps for a full investigation. Option C. Share the preliminary audit findings with industry peers to seek advice on best practices for handling such situations. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive internal investigation to ascertain the facts. Review relevant data handling procedures against Japan Airlines policies and Japanese privacy laws, and consult with the legal and compliance departments before any external communication. The correct answer is B. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the potential data handling issue and outlining steps for a full investigation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a nuanced understanding of Japan Airlines' internal policies and relevant Japanese aviation regulations concerning the handling of sensitive passenger information. The auditor's findings highlight a potential breach of data privacy, which can have significant reputational and legal consequences for Japan Airlines. Careful judgment is required to determine the most appropriate course of action that balances the need for transparency with the protection of passenger rights and compliance with regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves a thorough internal investigation, adhering strictly to Japan Airlines' established data protection protocols and Japanese privacy laws. This approach is correct because it prioritizes a systematic and compliant response. By initiating an internal review, Japan Airlines can ascertain the extent of the data handling issue, identify the root cause, and implement corrective actions without prematurely disclosing information that could be inaccurate or compromise ongoing investigations. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data stewardship mandated by Japanese regulations, such as the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, API. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disclose the audit findings publicly without a proper internal investigation. This is professionally unacceptable as it could lead to misinformation, damage Japan Airlines' reputation unnecessarily, and potentially violate API provisions regarding the lawful and fair processing of personal information. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the audit findings or to conduct a superficial review. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound, as it demonstrates a disregard for data privacy obligations and could result in ongoing noncompliance, leading to penalties and loss of passenger trust. Finally, an approach that involves sharing the findings with external parties before a thorough internal assessment and consultation with legal counsel is also problematic, as it could breach confidentiality agreements and API requirements for data protection. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope and implications of the audit findings. This involves consulting internal policies, relevant legal frameworks, in this case, Japanese aviation and data protection laws, and seeking guidance from legal and compliance departments. The process should prioritize fact-finding, risk assessment, and the development of a compliant and proportionate response. Transparency should be managed carefully, ensuring that disclosures are accurate, timely, and legally permissible. Question 9. Compliance review shows that during a pre-flight inspection at Tokyo Haneda Airport, a Japan Airlines flight crew identified a minor, intermittent indicator light malfunction on a non-critical system. The flight is scheduled to depart within the next hour, and the aircraft is otherwise in excellent condition. The flight crew is aware of the tight schedule and the potential impact of any delay on subsequent operations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the flight crew and the airline's operations control center to ensure compliance with aviation safety regulations? Option A. The flight crew, recognizing the minor nature of the malfunction and the tight schedule, should proceed with the flight, documenting the issue for future attention during scheduled maintenance. Option B. The flight crew should immediately request a full aircraft inspection by maintenance, regardless of the nature of the malfunction, to avoid any potential safety risks, even if it means significant flight delays. Option C. The flight crew should immediately inform the maintenance department and operations control center and await a formal assessment by qualified maintenance personnel to determine the airworthiness of the aircraft, potentially involving consultation of the minimum equipment list, MEL, before any decision on flight continuation is made. Option D. The Operations Control Center should instruct the flight crew to reset the indicator light system and proceed with the flight, assuming the malfunction is temporary. The correct answer is C. The flight crew should immediately inform the Maintenance Department and Operations Control Center and await a formal assessment by qualified maintenance personnel to determine the airworthiness of the aircraft, potentially involving consultation of the Minimum Equipment List, MEL, before any decision on flight continuation is made. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between operational efficiency and the stringent requirements of aviation safety regulations. Japan Airlines, as a carrier operating under Japanese aviation law and international standards, must prioritize safety above all else. The challenge lies in balancing the need to maintain flight schedules with the imperative to address potential safety concerns identified during pre-flight checks. A hasty decision to overlook a minor discrepancy could have severe consequences, while an overly cautious approach might lead to unnecessary delays and operational disruption. Careful judgment is required to assess the nature of the discrepancy, its potential impact on flight safety, and the appropriate response in accordance with established procedures and regulatory mandates. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented assessment of the identified discrepancy by qualified maintenance personnel, followed by a decision based on the findings and relevant regulations. This aligns with the principles of aviation safety management systems, which emphasize proactive identification, assessment, and mitigation of risks, specifically Japanese Civil Aviation Bureau (JCAB) regulations, as well as International Civil Aviation Organization (ICAO) standards which Japan adheres to, mandate that all aircraft defects must be assessed and rectified or deferred in accordance with approved procedures before flight. This approach ensures that any potential safety hazard is addressed, thereby upholding the highest standards of airworthiness and passenger safety. An incorrect approach of proceeding with the flight, without a proper assessment of the discrepancy by maintenance personnel, would be a direct violation of JCAB regulations concerning aircraft maintenance and airworthiness. This failure to adhere to established safety protocols creates an unacceptable risk to flight safety. Another incorrect approach, that of immediately grounding the aircraft for an extended period without a proper assessment, might be overly cautious and lead to unnecessary operational disruption if the discrepancy is minor and can be safely managed or rectified quickly. While safety is paramount, regulations also provide frameworks for managing minor discrepancies, and an immediate, unassessed grounding could be seen as a failure to apply these procedures correctly, potentially impacting operational efficiency without a clear safety justification. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety, adheres to regulatory requirements, and follows established company procedures. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential safety issue. 2. Immediately engaging the appropriate technical personnel, e.g., maintenance engineers. 3. Ensuring a thorough assessment of the discrepancy is conducted, considering its nature, potential impact, and applicable MEL minimum equipment list or other approved procedures. 4. Making a decision based on the assessment and regulatory guidance, which may include rectification, deferral with appropriate limitations, or grounding. 5. Documenting the entire process meticulously. Question 10. Stakeholder feedback indicates that Japan Airlines frequent flyer program members have expressed concerns about how their personal travel and preference data is being utilized for targeted marketing by the airline and its partners. Which of the following approaches best addresses these concerns while adhering to Japanese data protection regulations? Option A. Sharing detailed customer profiles, including past flight bookings and preferred seating choices, with all partner airlines and travel agencies to enable them to offer tailored promotions directly to Japan Airlines loyalty members. Option B. Utilizing aggregated and anonymized data from the loyalty program to identify general travel trends for marketing strategy development, without obtaining specific consent for individual data analysis. Option C. Proactively segmenting loyalty program members based on their travel history and preferences to offer personalized promotions and services, ensuring all data usage is clearly outlined in the program's privacy policy and that members can easily manage their communication preferences. Option D. Automatically enrolling all loyalty program members into a premium marketing communications list, assuming their consent for receiving promotional offers from Japan Airlines and its affiliates unless they actively opt out. The correct answer is C. Proactively segmenting loyalty program members based on their travel history and preferences to offer personalized promotions and services, ensuring all data usage is clearly outlined in the program's privacy policy and that members can easily manage their communication preferences. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines personnel regarding the handling of sensitive customer information, specifically in the context of a loyalty program. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to provide personalized service and retain customer loyalty with the stringent requirements of data privacy regulations applicable to Japan Airlines. Mismanagement of this information can lead to significant reputational damage, loss of customer trust, and potential legal penalties under Japanese data protection laws. Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with legal obligations and ethical standards. The correct approach involves a systematic and compliant process for data handling. This includes obtaining explicit consent for data usage, clearly communicating how data will be used, and providing mechanisms for customers to control or opt out of certain data processing activities. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to Japanese data protection laws such as the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, (AP). By adhering to these principles, Japan Airlines demonstrates its commitment to customer privacy and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves sharing customer loyalty program data with third-party marketing partners without explicit, informed consent from the customer is a direct violation of AP. This failure to obtain consent and provide transparency regarding data sharing constitutes a significant breach of data privacy regulations. Another incorrect approach, which is to use aggregated, anonymized data for marketing without considering the potential for re-identification or without a clear lawful basis for processing, also poses risks. While anonymization can mitigate some risks, the AP still requires a lawful basis for processing personal information, and the methods of anonymization must be robust enough to prevent re-identification. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes marketing objectives over customer privacy rights by making opt-out difficult or by assuming consent fundamentally undermines the ethical and legal framework governing data protection. Professionals at Japan Airlines should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes compliance and ethical conduct. This involves first identifying the relevant legal and regulatory requirements, e.g., AP. Second, assessing the potential impact of any proposed action on customer privacy and trust. Third, seeking explicit and informed consent from customers for any data processing activities that go beyond the essential service provision. Fourth, implementing robust data security measures and providing clear channels for customer inquiries and requests regarding their data. Finally, regularly reviewing and updating data handling practices to ensure ongoing compliance with evolving regulations and best practices. Question 11. Strategic planning requires Japan Airlines to evaluate potential new international routes. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with aviation regulations and operational integrity? Option A. Prioritize routes with the highest projected profitability and assume existing compliance measures are adequate for new markets. Option B. Conduct a thorough assessment of all applicable Japanese aviation laws, ICAO standards, and the specific regulatory requirements of target countries, integrating findings into the expansion plan. Option C. Focus on securing landing rights and operational agreements first, deferring detailed regulatory compliance checks until after the initial route launch. Option D. Rely primarily on the regulatory frameworks of destination countries, assuming they align with Japan's stringent aviation standards. The correct answer is A. Prioritize routes with the highest projected profitability and assume existing compliance measures are adequate for new markets. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines' strategic planning team as they consider expanding their international routes. Core difficulty lies in balancing ambitious growth objectives with the stringent regulatory environment, governing aviation safety and operational standards in Japan and potential destination countries. A critical aspect is ensuring that any expansion is not only commercially viable, but also fully compliant with the Civil Aviation Act of Japan, International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO standards, and any specific bilateral air service agreements. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulations can lead to significant operational disruptions, safety compromises, and severe legal and financial penalties, jeopardizing the airline's reputation and long-term sustainability. The correct approach involves a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment. This entails meticulously identifying all applicable Japanese aviation laws, ICAO annexes, and the specific regulations of target countries. It requires proactive engagement with aviation authorities to understand current and upcoming regulatory changes, and to ensure that proposed operational plans, aircraft suitability, and crew training programs meet or exceed all mandated safety and operational standards. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant, prioritizing passenger safety and operational integrity above all else, thereby upholding Japan Airlines' commitment to excellence and regulatory adherence. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize rapid market penetration and cost efficiency without a thorough regulatory review. This could manifest as assuming existing compliance frameworks are sufficient for new routes without verifying specific requirements, or delaying detailed regulatory checks until after initial expansion plans are finalized. Such an approach risks violating the Civil Aviation Act of Japan and international aviation standards, potentially leading to flight cancellations, grounding of aircraft, and significant fines. Another flawed strategy would be to rely solely on the regulatory frameworks of destination countries without adequately considering Japan's own stringent oversight and reporting obligations, creating a compliance gap. This could also lead to operational disruptions and reputational damage for Japan Airlines. Professionals should adopt a systematic, risk-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Identifying all potential regulatory touchpoints for the proposed expansion. 2. Conducting a detailed gap analysis between current practices and regulatory requirements. 3. Consulting with legal and compliance experts. And 4. Integrating regulatory compliance into the core of the strategic planning process from its inception, rather than treating it as an afterthought. Question 12. The audit findings indicate that a critical pre-flight inspection checklist item for Japan Airlines flight was not fully completed due to time constraints, with the crew opting to proceed based on a verbal assurance from a ground crew member that the task was handled. Option A. Instruct the ground crew member to verbally confirm the completion again and then proceed with the flight, considering the issue resolved. Option B. Delegate the completion of the outstanding checklist item to a junior cabin crew member who can verify it during the flight. Option C. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, assuming the verbal assurance was sufficient, and address the incomplete checklist item in the post-flight report. Option D. Immediately halt the departure, ensure the checklist item is fully completed and documented by authorized personnel, and report the discrepancy and corrective action to the relevant safety department. The correct answer is D. Immediately halt the departure, ensure the checklist item is fully completed and documented by authorized personnel, and report the discrepancy and corrective action to the relevant safety department. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines personnel due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The need to maintain flight schedules while ensuring all safety checks are completed thoroughly requires careful judgment and a commitment to prioritizing safety above all else. The audit findings highlight a potential lapse in this critical balance. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent reporting of the identified discrepancy, even if it leads to a delay. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety, which mandate that all safety-critical procedures must be completed without compromise, specifically under the framework governing aviation operations in Japan, which emphasizes a robust safety management system, SMS. Any deviation from established procedures that could impact flight safety must be immediately addressed and reported. This ensures that potential risks are mitigated before they can manifest into incidents. The ethical obligation to passenger and crew safety supersedes the commercial pressure of maintaining punctuality. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the flight without fully completing the required safety checks, perhaps by assuming the issue is minor or can be rectified post-flight. This directly violates the principle of safety first and the regulatory requirement for thorough pre-flight inspections. Such an action could lead to serious safety consequences and would be a clear breach of the airline safety protocols and Japanese aviation law. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to falsify or downplay the findings in the report to avoid scrutiny or delay. This constitutes a serious ethical and regulatory violation, undermining the integrity of the safety reporting system and potentially endangering lives. It also demonstrates a lack of professional accountability. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential safety implication of the finding. 2. Consulting relevant operational manuals and regulatory guidelines to understand the mandatory procedures. 3. Communicating the issue clearly and promptly to the appropriate supervisory personnel. 4. Following the established protocol for addressing safety discrepancies, which may include delaying the flight until the issue is resolved. 5. Documenting all actions taken and communications made. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are not based on expediency, but on a thorough assessment of risk and adherence to established safety standards. Question 13. System analysis indicates that a Japan Airlines flight attendant observes a minor, non-critical anomaly with a cabin emergency exit latch during a pre-flight check. The anomaly does not prevent the door from closing securely, and the flight is scheduled to depart imminently. The flight attendant is considering whether to report this observation, given the tight schedule and the perceived minor nature of the issue. Which of the following actions best adheres to aviation safety regulations and best practices for Japan Airlines? Option A. Report the anomaly immediately through the designated internal safety reporting system, providing a detailed description of the observation and its context. Option B. Report only the most significant safety deviations and consider minor anomalies as operational noise that does not require formal reporting. Option C. Address the anomaly by attempting a minor adjustment to the latch to ensure it functions smoothly, and then proceed with the flight without reporting, assuming the issue is resolved. Option D. Delay reporting the anomaly until after the flight has landed to avoid causing any disruption to the departure schedule. The correct answer is A. Report the anomaly immediately through the designated internal safety reporting system, providing a detailed description of the observation and its context. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Japan Airlines employee due to the critical nature of adhering to aviation regulations and internal company policies. The need for accurate and timely reporting of safety-related incidents is paramount to maintaining operational integrity and passenger safety. Misinterpreting or deliberately omitting information can lead to severe consequences, including regulatory penalties, damage to the company's reputation, and potential safety risks. Careful judgment is required to balance the immediate pressures of operational demands with the long-term imperative of safety compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough and transparent reporting of all observed safety deviations, regardless of perceived severity. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety management systems, which emphasize a no-blame culture for reporting and a commitment to continuous improvement based on accurate data. Specifically, Japan Airlines, like all carriers operating under the oversight of the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, is bound by regulations that mandate the reporting of all safety occurrences. This includes internal reporting mechanisms designed to capture even minor deviations that, when aggregated, can reveal systemic issues. The ethical obligation is to prioritize safety above all else, which necessitates full disclosure. An incorrect approach would be to selectively report only significant incidents, assuming minor deviations are inconsequential. This fails to acknowledge that small issues can escalate or indicate underlying problems. Ethically, this constitutes a dereliction of duty to report and a potential breach of trust with both passengers and regulatory bodies. Another incorrect approach is to delay reporting due to operational pressures. While efficiency is important, safety reporting timelines are often stipulated by regulations and internal policies for good reason. Delays can compromise the effectiveness of investigations and corrective actions. This also undermines the principle of timely intervention for safety concerns. Finally, attempting to fix a minor issue without reporting it first is also problematic. While proactive problem solving is commendable, bypassing the established reporting protocol can obscure the true frequency and nature of safety events, hindering comprehensive analysis and potentially leading to the recurrence of the issue. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety compliance and ethical conduct. This involves understanding the relevant JCAB regulations and Japan Airlines' internal safety reporting procedures. When faced with a safety-related observation, the process should be: 1. Identify the observation as a potential safety deviation. 2. Consult internal guidelines and regulations to determine reporting requirements. 3. Report the observation accurately and completely, without omission or embellishment, adhering to any specified timelines. 4. Cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation or review. This systematic approach ensures that all safety information is captured and utilized for continuous improvement, upholding both regulatory obligations and ethical responsibilities. Question 14. The audit findings indicate that a critical pre-flight safety check for Japan Airlines aircraft was not fully completed by the assigned technician due to time constraints before the scheduled departure. The technician, under pressure to maintain the flight schedule, has not yet finalized the inspection of a specific component. What is the most appropriate course of action for the responsible flight crew member who is made aware of this situation? Option A. Immediately inform the maintenance supervisor and flight operations manager of the incomplete safety check, advocating for the necessary time to complete it before departure. Option B. Sign off on the pre-flight inspection checklist, noting the incomplete check, and rely on the pilot's discretion to monitor the component during flight. Option C. Instruct a junior, less experienced ground staff member to quickly complete the remaining part of the safety check to avoid a delay. Option D. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, assuming the technician will complete the check shortly after takeoff. Correct answer is A. Immediately inform the maintenance supervisor and flight operations manager of the incomplete safety check, advocating for the necessary time to complete it before departure. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Japan Airlines personnel due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The need to maintain flight schedules while ensuring all safety checks are completed thoroughly requires careful judgment and a commitment to prioritizing safety above all else. The pressure to avoid delays can create an environment where shortcuts might be considered, making robust ethical and regulatory compliance paramount. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication strategy. This means immediately reporting the discrepancy to the relevant maintenance supervisor and the flight operations manager, clearly outlining the nature of the issue and its potential impact on safety. This approach aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety, which mandate that all aircraft must be in a fully airworthy condition before departure. Specifically, this aligns with the spirit and likely intent of the Civil Aviation Act of Japan and the operational manuals of Japan Airlines, which would undoubtedly require all safety-critical checks to be completed and documented before flight. The ethical imperative is to uphold the highest standards of safety for passengers, crew, and the public, even if it means a flight delay. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the flight without a complete safety check. This directly violates aviation safety regulations, which are designed to prevent accidents. Such an action would demonstrate a severe disregard for the established protocols and could have catastrophic consequences. It would also breach the trust placed in the individual by Japan Airlines and the regulatory authorities. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to falsify the documentation to indicate the check was completed. This is not only a regulatory violation, but also a serious ethical breach, constituting fraud. It undermines the entire safety system and carries severe legal and professional repercussions. A further incorrect approach would be to delegate the completion of the safety check to an unqualified individual or to assume it was completed without verification. This demonstrates a lack of personal responsibility and a failure to uphold the duty of care expected of aviation professionals. It bypasses the established chain of command and accountability for critical safety procedures. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the regulatory framework and company policies, prioritizing safety above all other considerations. When faced with a potential conflict between operational demands and safety requirements, professionals should 1. Identify the safety-critical issue. 2. Consult relevant regulations and company procedures. 3. Communicate the issue clearly and promptly to the appropriate authorities. 4. Advocate for the safest course of action, even if it leads to operational inconvenience. 5. Document all actions and communications thoroughly. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that a key government contract for airport infrastructure development is nearing its bidding phase. Japan Airlines is a strong contender, but a senior official within the relevant government ministry has subtly indicated that a consulting fee to a newly established advisory firm, which the official has connections to, would significantly smooth the process and ensure favorable consideration for Japan Airlines' bid. This advisory firm has no prior track record, and its services appear to be largely nominal. What is the most ethically and legally sound approach for Japan Airlines to take in this situation? Option A. Investigate the advisory firm thoroughly to ascertain its legitimacy and the official's true intentions before making any decision, potentially delaying the bid. Option B. Offer a direct donation to a government-affiliated charity in the official's name as a gesture of goodwill, which is a more discreet way to influence the outcome. Option C. Decline to engage with the advisory firm and proceed with the bid based solely on merit, while internally documenting the interaction with the government official as a potential integrity concern. Option D. Agree to pay the consulting fee to the advisory firm, as it is a common practice in securing large contracts and will ensure Japan Airlines' competitiveness. The correct answer is C. Decline to engage with the advisory firm and proceed with the bid based solely on merit, while internally documenting the interaction with the government official as a potential integrity concern. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a company's immediate financial interests and its ethical obligations to maintain transparency and fair competition. Japan Airlines, like any major corporation, operates within a framework of regulations designed to ensure market integrity and protect stakeholders. The pressure to secure a lucrative contract can create a temptation to engage in practices that, while potentially beneficial in the short term, could violate these principles. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation, prioritizing long-term ethical standing and regulatory compliance over short-term gains. The correct approach involves a commitment to ethical conduct and strict adherence to all applicable regulations. This means refusing to engage in any form of bribery or undue influence, even if it appears to be a common practice or a necessary step to secure business. The justification for this approach lies in the fundamental principles of business ethics and the specific legal and regulatory framework governing corporate behavior in Japan. These frameworks typically prohibit bribery, corruption, and anti-competitive practices, and adherence is crucial for maintaining the company's license to operate, its reputation, and the trust of its customers and the public. Engaging in the proposed action of offering a consulting fee to a government official in exchange for favorable consideration on a contract is a direct violation of anti-bribery laws and ethical business conduct. This constitutes an attempt to improperly influence a decision-making process, undermining fair competition, and potentially leading to the selection of a less suitable provider based on illicit means rather than merit. Such an action erodes public trust in both the company and the government, and carries severe legal penalties, including fines and imprisonment, as well as reputational damage that can be irreparable. Another incorrect approach would be to rationalize the payment as a legitimate business expense or a standard practice within the industry. This is a dangerous form of self-deception that ignores the clear intent behind the payment. If the payment is contingent upon securing the contract or is made to an official with decision-making power in a way that bypasses standard procurement procedures, it is highly likely to be considered a bribe, regardless of how it is labeled. A third incorrect approach would be to seek loopholes or ambiguous interpretations of regulations to justify the action. While legal expertise is valuable, it should be used to ensure compliance, not to circumvent ethical obligations. Attempting to find technicalities to permit unethical behavior is a sign of poor professional judgment and can still lead to severe consequences if the spirit, if not the letter, of the law is violated. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear ethical compass, a thorough understanding of relevant regulations, and a willingness to seek guidance when in doubt. This includes 1. Identifying the ethical dilemma and potential conflicts of interest. 2. Consulting relevant company policies and codes of conduct. 3. Researching and understanding applicable laws and regulations. 4. Seeking advice from legal counsel or ethics officers. 5. Prioritizing long-term integrity and compliance over short-term benefits. 6. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for streamlining flight crew scheduling at Japan Airlines, suggesting a reduction in mandatory rest periods between flights to increase aircraft utilization. While this could lead to significant cost savings, it also raises concerns about crew fatigue and its potential impact on operational safety. How should the management of Japan Airlines proceed with these findings? Option A. Disregard the study's recommendations entirely, as any suggestion to reduce rest periods is inherently unsafe and could lead to negative publicity. Option B. Implement the schedule changes on a trial basis in a few select routes, monitoring crew performance for any immediate signs of fatigue without a formal regulatory impact assessment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive, independent review of the study's findings, focusing on potential safety risks and compliance with Japan's Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, regulations regarding crew rest, and only proceed with changes that demonstrably maintain or enhance safety margins. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed schedule changes to realize the cost savings, assuming flight crews are capable of managing their fatigue. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement the proposed schedule changes to realize the cost savings, assuming flight crews are capable of managing their fatigue. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's operational goals with ethical conduct and adherence to aviation regulations. Japan Airlines, as a publicly traded entity and a major international carrier, is subject to stringent oversight regarding safety, operational integrity, and fair business practices. The pressure to improve efficiency, while a legitimate business objective, must not lead to compromises that could jeopardize safety or violate ethical standards. The core of the dilemma lies in identifying and addressing potential shortcuts that might be suggested under the guise of efficiency, but could have serious safety or regulatory implications. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and transparent review of the efficiency study's findings, prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This means critically evaluating any proposed changes to ensure they do not negatively impact operational safety, crew well-being, or adherence to Japan's Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, regulations. If the study suggests changes that could compromise safety margins or increase crew workload to an unsustainable level, these must be flagged and rejected. The ethical justification stems from the paramount importance of passenger and crew safety in aviation, a principle deeply embedded in international aviation law and JCAB guidelines. Furthermore, maintaining public trust and the company's reputation relies on demonstrating a commitment to responsible operations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement efficiency measures without a rigorous safety and regulatory impact assessment. This could lead to increased risk of incidents, potential violations of JCAB regulations, and severe reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the study entirely without proper consideration, which could mean missing genuine opportunities for improvement and potentially falling behind competitors. Finally, prioritizing cost savings or speed over safety considerations even if not explicitly violating a regulation. It would be an ethical failure, as it demonstrates a disregard for the fundamental duty of care owed to passengers and crew. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a multi-stakeholder review, including safety officers, regulatory compliance experts, and operational managers. Any proposed changes should undergo a formal risk assessment process, with clear documentation of the evaluation and decision-making. Transparency with employees about the rationale behind decisions, especially those impacting their work, is also crucial. The ultimate goal is to achieve efficiency gains through methods that are safe, compliant, and ethically sound, reinforcing Japan Airlines' commitment to excellence. Question 17. Upon reviewing the candidate list for an upcoming pilot recruitment drive at Japan Airlines, you notice that your close personal friend, whom you have known for many years and with whom you maintain a very cordial relationship, is among the applicants. You are scheduled to be part of the interview panel for this specific recruitment. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Conduct the interview as planned, but make a mental note to subtly steer the conversation towards areas where your friend excels, ensuring they have a positive experience. Option B. Immediately inform your direct supervisor and the HR department about your personal relationship with the candidate and request to be recused from the interview panel for this candidate. Option C. Discreetly provide your friend with some insights into the interview questions and evaluation criteria beforehand to help them prepare better. Option D. Proceed with the interview as scheduled, ensuring you remain objective and fair, as your personal friendship should not influence your professional judgment. The correct answer is B. Immediately inform your direct supervisor and the HR department about your personal relationship with the candidate and request to be recused from the interview panel for this candidate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a personal relationship and professional duty, specifically within the context of Japan Airlines' operational integrity and ethical standards. The core of the dilemma lies in maintaining impartiality and upholding the company's commitment to fair and transparent hiring processes, even when personal connections are involved. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising professional ethics or company policy. The correct approach involves immediate and transparent disclosure of the personal relationship to the relevant hiring manager or HR department. This upholds the principle of avoiding conflicts of interest, a cornerstone of professional conduct in any organization, including Japan Airlines. By disclosing, the employee demonstrates integrity and allows the company to implement appropriate measures to ensure the candidate's evaluation is objective and unbiased. This aligns with general ethical guidelines for employment and the implicit expectation of fairness in recruitment processes, which are critical for maintaining employee morale and public trust in the airline. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the interview without disclosing the relationship. This failure constitutes a breach of professional ethics by creating an undisclosed conflict of interest. It undermines the integrity of the hiring process, potentially leading to perceptions of favoritism or unfair advantage for the candidate, which is detrimental to Japan Airlines' reputation and internal fairness. Another incorrect approach is to subtly influence the interview process in favor of the candidate. This is a direct violation of ethical conduct and company policy. It not only compromises the fairness of the hiring decision, but also exposes both the employee and Japan Airlines to significant reputational damage and potential disciplinary action. Such actions erode trust and create a toxic work environment. Finally, attempting to withdraw from the interview process without proper notification or explanation to the relevant parties is also an inappropriate response. While it might seem like an attempt to avoid conflict, it lacks transparency and professionalism. It fails to address the root issue of the undisclosed relationship and could still lead to questions about the integrity of the hiring process if the candidate's connection to the interviewer is discovered later. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the company's code of conduct and ethical guidelines. When faced with a potential conflict of interest, the first step is always to identify the conflict. The next crucial step is to disclose the conflict to the appropriate authority within the organization. This allows for a structured and transparent resolution, ensuring that decisions are made impartially and in the best interest of the company. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that a proposed change to the flight crew scheduling software for Japan Airlines could significantly reduce operational costs. However, during the review of the software's proposed algorithm, a junior operations analyst notices a potential flaw that might, under specific and rare circumstances, lead to a slight delay in the generation of critical pre-flight briefing information. The analyst is concerned this could indirectly impact crew preparedness, even though the study's authors have deemed the risk negligible. What is the most ethically responsible course of action for the junior operations analyst? Option A. Proceed with the implementation of the software as planned, trusting the study's author's assessment that the risk is negligible and focusing on the significant cost savings for Japan Airlines. Option B. Immediately report the potential flaw to the safety department and the relevant oversight committee, recommending a thorough review and validation of the algorithm before the software is implemented, even if it delays the cost savings. Option C. Privately investigate the flaw further to gather more definitive proof of its impact before raising the concern, to avoid appearing overly cautious or hindering progress for Japan Airlines. Option D. Inform the study's authors of the concern and ask them to document their assessment of the risk, but do not escalate it further unless the authors change their minds. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the potential flaw to the safety department and the relevant oversight committee, recommending a thorough review and validation of the algorithm before the software is implemented, even if it delays the cost savings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the company's operational goals with ethical conduct and adherence to aviation regulations. The pressure to meet efficiency targets can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential safety concerns, which is a critical ethical failure in the aviation industry. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency gains do not compromise the safety and integrity of Japan Airlines operations. The correct approach involves prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This means immediately reporting the observed discrepancy to the appropriate internal channels and ensuring that the issue is thoroughly investigated and rectified before any operational changes are implemented. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of aviation safety, which mandate that all decisions must prioritize the well-being of passengers, crew, and the public. Specifically, this approach would be guided by Japan Airlines' Internal Safety Management System, SMS, and relevant Japanese Civil Aviation Bureau, JCAB, regulations concerning operational integrity and reporting of safety-related issues. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the efficiency study's recommendations without addressing the observed discrepancy. This would be a direct violation of safety protocols and could lead to significant risks, potentially contravening JCAB regulations on airworthiness and operational safety. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the observation as minor or insignificant. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an ethical lapse in recognizing potential risks, which could have serious consequences for Japan Airlines' reputation and regulatory standing. Ignoring the discrepancy or attempting to resolve it informally without proper documentation and oversight also constitutes an ethical failure, as it bypasses established safety procedures and accountability mechanisms. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a safety-first mindset. This involves 1. Identifying the potential risk and its implications. 2. Consulting relevant company policies and regulatory requirements, e.g., Japan Airlines SMS, JCAB directives. 3. Escalating the concern through the designated reporting channels. 4. Advocating for a thorough investigation and resolution before proceeding with any operational changes. 5. Documenting all actions and communications. This systematic approach ensures that ethical considerations and regulatory compliance are integrated into operational decision-making. Question 19. The control framework reveals that a senior manager at Japan Airlines, responsible for overseeing a significant procurement contract, has learned that a close family member is a substantial shareholder in a company bidding for that contract. The manager has not yet disclosed this potential conflict of interest. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for this manager? Option A. Delay any disclosure until after the contract has been awarded to avoid any perception of undue influence on the bidding process. Option B. Seek informal advice from a trusted colleague within Japan Airlines to gauge their opinion on whether disclosure is necessary. Option C. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest to the designated compliance officer or legal department at Japan Airlines. Option D. Proceed with the evaluation of the bid, believing that personal impartiality can be maintained and the financial benefit to the family member is indirect. The correct answer is C. Immediately disclose the potential conflict of interest to the designated compliance officer or legal department at Japan Airlines. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate a conflict between personal gain and their duty to their employer, Japan Airlines, and potentially to regulatory bodies overseeing aviation safety and financial reporting. The core of the dilemma lies in the potential for undisclosed personal financial interests to influence professional judgment and actions, which could compromise the integrity of Japan Airlines operations and its compliance with relevant Japanese regulations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all actions are transparent, ethical, and in full compliance with internal policies and external laws. The correct approach involves immediate and full disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the appropriate internal authority at Japan Airlines, as per company policy and general ethical principles of corporate governance. This proactive step allows Japan Airlines to manage the conflict appropriately, which might involve recusal from certain decisions or further investigation. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and the ethical obligations of employees to act in the best interest of their employer, preventing situations where personal financial gain could lead to decisions detrimental to the company or its stakeholders. Japanese corporate law and ethical codes for professionals in regulated industries emphasize transparency and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. An incorrect approach of remaining silent and proceeding with the decision-making process without disclosure is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This failure to disclose constitutes a breach of trust and potentially violates internal Japan Airlines policies regarding conflicts of interest. It also risks violating Japanese regulations that mandate transparency in business dealings and prohibit actions that could be construed as insider trading or self-dealing, even if no explicit illegal act has yet occurred. The potential for perceived or actual bias in decision-making is high, undermining the integrity of Japan Airlines operations. Another incorrect approach, that of seeking informal advice from a colleague without formal reporting, is also professionally deficient. While well-intentioned, it bypasses established reporting channels and does not provide the company with the necessary information to formally address the conflict. This can lead to inconsistent application of policy and leaves the individual and the company exposed to regulatory scrutiny. Finally, an approach that involves rationalizing the situation by believing personal gain is minimal and unlikely to influence decisions, and therefore no disclosure is needed, is a dangerous form of self-deception. Ethical and regulatory frameworks are designed to prevent even the appearance of impropriety, and subjective assessments of influence are insufficient. The obligation is to disclose, allowing the company to make an objective assessment. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve 1. Identifying a potential conflict of interest. 2. Consulting internal company policies and relevant external regulations. 3. Immediately disclosing the conflict to the designated authority within the company. 4. Cooperating fully with any subsequent review or decision-making process by the company. This structured approach ensures that ethical standards are upheld and regulatory compliance is maintained. Question 20. Examination of the data shows that a close friend of a Japan Airlines cabin crew member has requested assistance in securing a last-minute flight booking on a highly popular, fully booked route. The friend has indicated they are willing to offer a significant personal gift to the cabin crew member as a token of appreciation for their help in finding a seat, implying a willingness to bypass standard booking procedures if necessary. Option A. Report the offer of a gift and the request for preferential booking to the Japan Airlines Compliance Department or designated supervisor immediately. Option B. Politely decline the gift and inform the friend that standard booking procedures must be followed without reporting the offer to Japan Airlines management. Option C. Accept the gift but refuse to use insider knowledge, suggesting the friend try their luck with the public booking system. Option D. Accept the gift and use insider knowledge to secure a seat for the friend, ensuring the friend is booked on the flight. The correct answer is D. Accept the gift and use insider knowledge to secure a seat for the friend, ensuring the friend is booked on the flight. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Japan Airlines employee due to the inherent conflict between personal gain and the company's ethical standards and regulatory obligations. The core of the dilemma lies in the potential for preferential treatment and the misuse of insider information, which can undermine fair competition, damage Japan Airlines' reputation, and violate aviation industry regulations. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising integrity. The correct approach involves immediate and transparent reporting of the situation to the appropriate internal channels at Japan Airlines. This upholds the company's code of conduct and any relevant aviation regulations that mandate reporting of potential conflicts of interest or unethical practices. By escalating the matter, the employee ensures that Japan Airlines can investigate and address the situation appropriately, maintaining its commitment to fairness and compliance. This proactive disclosure demonstrates professionalism and adherence to ethical principles. An incorrect approach would be to accept the offer and proceed with the booking without disclosure. This constitutes a direct violation of ethical conduct and potentially company policy, as it implies preferential treatment and a conflict of interest. It could also be seen as an attempt to circumvent standard booking procedures, which might have regulatory implications for Japan Airlines regarding fair access to services. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the offer and not report it, hoping the situation resolves itself. This passive stance fails to address the ethical breach and leaves Japan Airlines vulnerable to potential reputational damage or regulatory scrutiny if the preferential treatment is discovered. It also misses an opportunity to reinforce ethical standards within the organization. Finally, attempting to negotiate a personal benefit from the situation, even if not directly accepting the offer, is also an incorrect approach. This demonstrates a lack of integrity and a willingness to exploit a situation for personal gain, which is contrary to professional conduct and the principles of fair dealing expected of Japan Airlines employees. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the company's code of conduct, ethical guidelines, and any applicable aviation regulations. When faced with a potential conflict of interest or an offer that seems to provide undue personal advantage, the first step should always be to identify the ethical implications. The next step is to consult internal policies and reporting mechanisms. If unsure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the compliance department is crucial. Transparency and adherence to established procedures are paramount in maintaining professional integrity and protecting the organization.